Hey, what's going on? Welcome to a bonus episode of AngularAir. Today we are going to be talking about the newly released Angular console. We got a bunch of team members from Narwhal here to discuss it, so we will get into it. First, let's say hi to our panelists. Joining us today, we've got Austin with us. Austin, what's going on?
How's it going, everyone? When this first came out, I was like so excited. So I'm really excited for the show to hear more about it.
Nice. We got Mike with us. Mike, what's happening?
Not too much. As with Austin, I was pretty excited too, except I was a little bit more in the dark. I was on vacation last week and didn't see the announcement. So I'm like, Angular console, what's that? That sounds new and different. And so I'm excited to see what it's all about because I haven't had to dig in or been able to dig in yet.
Well, here's the perfect spot. We'll be able to get
front row seats.
Awesome. All right. And we have a bunch of guests today. So let's just go down the list. First, we got Ayşegül with us. Ayşegül, how's it going?
Hi, how are you? It's nice to be back.
Always nice to have you. And we got Dan with us. Dan, how's it going?
That's going okay, Justin. Can't complain.
Nice, nice. James, how's it going?
Good, thanks. This is my first time on AngularAir. I've been staring at you in Narwhal meetings for ages, just waiting for the invite to come, but this is my first time. Very happy to be here.
Yes, we need to line up your episode because we definitely need to have you on, so for sure. All right, Victor, how's it going, Victor?
Hey, all right. Hi, everyone.
Okay, so let's talk this Angular console. Maybe somebody give us a rundown first of what it is and what we're talking about here.
Sure. Does anyone want to do it? I can do it. I will be sort of the fallback, the catch-all clause. So when no one wants to speak, I can speak. Okay, that no one volunteered. So essentially, what it is a different way to use the Angular CLI. This is sort of the more boring way to describe it. Which is the Angular CLI is an excellent tool, and as I wrote in the announcement, I think it transformed the Angular ecosystem by solving a lot of problems that we would solve usually sort of in an ad hoc fashion, like maintaining webpack configs, figuring out how to do testing, trying to unbreak source maps, all the things that are actually very, very hard, right? Exceptionally hard to do. Angular CLI just solves, right? Or most of the time it just solves. It also allows you to sort of promote best practices, right? If you have an organization, a certain folder structure is laid out for you, people know which commands to run, all the things work. So it's great, right? As a result, because it does so much, it's maybe a bit too complex for some folks. Or a better way to put it, sometimes you can find a different way to use the CLI, right? Or like a different vehicle for delivering the same functionality, right? And that's what Angular console is. Essentially the UI for the Angular CLI. It's not a replacement or anything like that, right? It uses the Angular CLI under the hood. So it basically involves Angular CLI commands. So it's just a different way for you to use the CLI, right? It allows you to open projects, your Angular projects, create new ones, import existing ones, run generators, like with schematics, run commands like build and test, run PM scripts, install extensions, basically do sort of absolutely everything. Right now, it's not absolutely everything, but do everything that the CLI does, at least when we release final.
And this is a standalone application, desktop application?
Yeah, so it's a standalone app, and currently we have two versions for Windows and for Mac. Actually, I looked at the stats yesterday, and 2/3 of our users are Windows users, which is excellent because I switched to a Windows laptop full-time to make the Windows version work really well. So I'm truly committed to helping our Windows brothers and sisters, be productive with Angular, right? And actually, I'm enjoying the laptop by itself. So I can rant about the laptop for hours, right? Which I already did in the office. James knows. But essentially, it's a standalone app. You can get it, you can run it, and you can sort of start working with your Angular apps using that app, right? And soon next week, we're going to cut a version for Linux users as well. So those 5 of you who are on Ubuntu, Arch, or whatever, right? You'll get the app as well.
So you mentioned that it's basically like a UI for the Angular CLI. And I know this isn't Narwhal's first dipping of the toes into the tooling arena with NX. Now, is Angular console purely focused on providing an NX experience, or is it just extending the CLI, or both?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. That's a very, very good question, because you can have this impression, knowing that we provide Annex, which is an extension for the CLI, right? You can say, like, are you just targeting that? Are you basically helping your clients, or are you helping everyone, right? And we want to do both, right? But fundamentally, Angular Console is a generic tool. It's a generic UI for the CLI, and there is nothing there in the logic that is a next specific or a next hardcoded, right? You can add your own set of schematics, or rather it will recognize that your project has those schematics. Let's say if you're doing a native script app, right? And it will work exactly the same way. So it's a generic tool for the Angular CLI, even more so. To make sure this remains the case, right? We are engaging with the Angular team, in particular with Steven, an excellent guy, whom I really like, handsome as well. And he has the right of veto to basically veto any feature that we can put into the console that would make it a non-generic tool, right? So anything that he can find slightly suspicious and say, hey, that seems like you're just benefiting yourself by adding a button that says transfer money to Victor because he wants to pay his mortgage sooner, right? That is not good, right? And it won't go there, right? Without any discussion, we're going to remove the functionality or close that PR, right? So we're committed to keeping it generic, truly generic.
So we talked about, how we're keeping it generic and things like that. Is, outside of putting a UI on top of it, is there any additional features that it provides that the Angular CLI doesn't provide?
Right. Okay.
I can take that. I can take that if you want.
Sure.
So I would say not as such. So fundamentally, we're leveraging the CLI behind the scenes. I think one of the great things it helps with is discoverability of features that are already in the CLI, but because the CLI is so powerful and so capable of doing so many different things, it's often the case that you might not even know a feature exists. One thing people might know exists, but even once you know exists is kind of, there's an element of discoverability about it, is adding extensions on top of the CLI. So if you want to create some schematics for yourself, or if you want to use some popular community schematics like ngRx or Angular Material or something like that, you can easily search for those. We've created a fairly comprehensive list out of the box in Angular Console to just search for those and add them with a click. So instead of going off to the relevant NPM page or GitHub or something like that to read about the schematics, run your ng-add commands, you can do that all visually and all through a simple to use search UI. So I would say that's a good example of the things that we just shine a light on by having a UI in the first place. So it's not an extra, but it's something which you can kind of discover more easily.
That's actually my favorite thing, to make it, that we make it very easy for other schematics to be discovered.
The other thing I noticed is that because we got a nice intro to the console yesterday from Nathan Walker as he kind of demoed his XPlat platform using the console. So it looked like, and like I said, I haven't used it, so I'm coming in fresh here, that you were able to access and generate through multiple schematics. But I know that's not something that's available directly from the CLI. How are you going about managing that and to be able to add multiple schematics in?
So let me talk about that. Let me first add a point to the previous question, because I just want to quickly add one before we move on too far, right? And then we can talk about this. So regarding the previous question, currently, mostly what the console does is what the CLI does, right? Meaning that what you run in the terminal, you sort of get here. We just help you with the input side most of the time, right? The input side is like provisioning all the parameters and figure out what needs to run, right? And we give you some feedback where you're typing stuff in. We can run validations, all the complete stuff for you. Like, it's useful, but we are mainly focusing on the input. So in principle, you have the same input when you're punching stuff in the terminal, which we actually show you. What we aren't doing enough yet is helping you with your output, right? Because currently the output essentially is exactly what the CLI will give you. You see the same text, right? And so what we're going to do before we cut the final, which will happen relatively soon, is we're going to help you with the output as well, right? And because the tool is generic, we want to do it in such a way so we don't hardcore it for like one command and just say, like, if you run build that we provide, it works. If you run anything else, right, it doesn't work, right? And a lot of other UI for the CLI solutions kind of do it in this way. They have a switch statement somewhere. It says, I recognize that thing. Let me show you something specific for that very thing, right? And we want to avoid that, because for any real project, and if you go to any real client, they have a lot of very custom stuff, right? Written. So you want to make sure it works. So I spoke with Alex Eagle and a few other folks, on the Angular team to see how can we get that information, right? And at some point in the future, hopefully sooner than later, the CLI is going to emit event similar to how Basic does it, describing what's going on when you're running the command. At which point, Angular console, even though it will still do what the CLI does, will be an even more different way of actually using it, right? Because you can actually visually see knobs and charts and things like that, right, corresponding to the command you're running, right? So even though the CLI can still do it, the view will be very different. Right? The way it consumes information will be very, very different, right? Regarding schematics, essentially the way it works currently, Mike, is that we looked at the schematic collection set in your package.json, and we just essentially traverse that. So if something doesn't work in the CLI, it won't work in Angular console. We don't do magical things that somehow fix the CLI. No, we don't do anything like that, right? And that's intentional, right? Even if we don't like certain parts, and everyone has different preferences, right? In terms of I would like that command to be slightly differently. We avoid changing it in any way because I think it's important for the end user to know that what they, regardless of which tool they use to interact with the CLI, either the terminal or the UI, the result will be the same, right? So you don't get this now I need to remember that thing extra, right? So that's important, right? Similarly, we want to do it in such a way that everything works in a generic fashion for the same very reason, right? If let's say we cover 80% of the functionality of the CLI and it works super great, at 20% we just avoid it because we didn't hardcore it somewhere in some switch statement. What's going to happen is that users will have to switch to the terminal 20% of the time, right? And it sucks, right? It means that if someone doesn't want to use the terminal or feel uncomfortable using the terminal, they'll have to do it, and now they have two tools to use instead of one, right? And the idea is that you want to use one tool predominantly, right? Which means that you have to behave exactly the same way the CLI does. And you have to be generic. So everything you can do with the CLI, you can do here, and you don't do anything extra really, apart from things like auto completion, some niceness on top, right?
Hey, before we go any further, where can people get this at?
Personally email me with your bank account, and then I might send you a copy, the fresh build. But you can also go to angularconsole.com and download it from there. It's free and it's MIT licensed, so get it. We're not going to it's basically a real open source project that is mainly built by us right now, but we hope more folks will contribute to in the near future.
So I assume this is a Electron app built on Angular?
It's actually a beautiful thing. The Electron piece itself is relatively straightforward, and I would say not that sophisticated, but it is an Angular app. And even more so, it's a stateless Angular app, meaning that everything you see in there is a reflection of the file system, right? So if you change it, and then we'll demo it in a bit, when you change stuff in the file system, the Angular console will immediately reflect that, because it's just a different way to look at the file system, right? And interact with the terminal. And the way it's written, I highly encourage you to play with the code and see how it works. That we have a GraphQL endpoint, we use Apollo, so to provide the the API that the UI part uses, right? So you can interact with this API yourself by just hitting /GraphQL and see what you can get out of it. So in principle, if you're very you have a weekend to kill, you can just get the project and build your own UI on top of the endpoint that we provide, right? And you can have a very different UI experience, right? With the whole infrastructure bit, behind the scenes, working, in a truly generic way.
Hey, will it auto update?
We made sure that that part works. So when we cut another beta, which should happen next week, hopefully, all of you who are the users of Angular console, and if you're not, well, that's too bad. You should become one, right? You'll get the fresh code, like an updated version.
Cool. All right. So what features does it have? And we talked a little bit. We heard a little bit about these schematics and stuff like that. Everything that the Angular CLI can do. Maybe we can kind of run down what that is.
Maybe I should show it off as long as we're talking about its features.
I have one quick question before you do. So you mentioned auto updating and versioning. So if I'm assuming this is a standalone tool that you can point to multiple projects, does it tailor the experience based upon the version of each individual project. So if I have an older project that's maybe used in version 6 that I don't update, and in 6 months I have an Angular 7 application, will it automatically parse and determine which version I'm using in a given project to provide a relative experience for that?
So the question is, the question is yes, and then there is like an asterisk that I'm going to cover with. So first, it works only with Angular 6 plus projects. So it has to be Angular 6, because Angular 6 is such a big jump in terms of what, or rather the CLI 6. The CLI 6 is such a big jump compared to CLI 1.x. Targeting both is just, it's very hard, and also CLI 1.x is just not as flexible, so it doesn't give you as much information. So it's harder to build this experience, generic experience, right? So in general, when you go to a project, you use the version of the CLI that you use in your project, right? So it is there, that's what you use, right? That's what the tool is using. So it will work basically if you have a CLI 6 project and a CLI 7 project, it will use CLI 7 for the CLI 7 project, and it will use the CLI 6 for CLI 6 project. The asterisk there is that if you start making drastic changes in terms of how you connect your schematics and your JSON, like basically all the metadata that your schematics and your builders have, right? We will have to support that, right? Right now, we basically support CLI 6 because that's the one that's out there, like that's available. Once we have breaking changes or new functionality in terms of metadata that only works for CLI 7, right? That we want to take advantage of, the tool obviously will have to differentiate between them, right? And we'll check your current version, your local version, the version of your project, right? And we'll decide what to do. Which behavior to implement. Another asterisk was even on the side, right? Is that the tool comes with Angular CLI statically linked, essentially bundled in, right? Why is that, you can ask? You can say, Victor, this is crazy, right? And it's not crazy for the following reason. We want to have the following experience, which is if I get a brand new Lenovo laptop or whatever, right? And I brought it home and I'm happy, right? And I want to start building Angular apps because I'm happy. If I have to install tools, like install Node and npm, then install global packages, I can get confused, lose my motivation, and become a hockey player or whatever, do something else, right? Because we want it to be that you get a laptop, you install one thing and it works, right? For it to work, right, truly reliably, we want the thing to be bundled in. We want it to be in there because we know it's in there. We know the version. We know that version of the CLI is going to work, right? So right now it comes with the CLI embedded, right? So and right now the tool is called Angular Console 6 because it comes with CLI 6. When CLI 7 comes out, Angular Console 7 will come out that will contain the CLI 6, right? What we're going to add soon is your ability to provision different versions of the CLI, at which point this embedded version is not going to be used, right? You have to download stuff from the internet, more will be involved. So there is you have a higher chance of something going wrong, right? Because it is possible when you do npm-g, something gets screwed up, right? And nothing works, right? So you want to have a way where nothing can get screwed up, where everything is as reliable as it gets, right? That no matter how new you are to programming, how broken your global node modules are, you can still build an Angular project.
Any new feature you like, Mike? Victor is going to do it before his wedding in 2 weeks. So anything you want.
Yeah, I can sneak it in, right? So let me know.
All right, I will get into the repo and dig through the code, and I will hit you up with a bunch of issues.
All right, Dan, you want to show some stuff?
Sure, let's show some stuff. Okay, let's do a thing, share a thing. Can you see the thing?
We can see this console thing, yes.
Yep.
Dude, great. So, okay, this is the console. And you might notice that Angular console is inside of the console. This is part of the way that I built it, was using itself, which was kind of cool. But anyway, what is it? What does it do? So here you can sort of see all of your Angular workspaces. Most people only have one, but if you are, I don't know, a hacker extraordinaire, you might have a couple pet projects, and you can have some favorites that you keep at the top, or some lesser important ones, like some workspace that doesn't really matter. And if you're brand new and you don't have any workspaces, you basically see a Get Started guide that allows you to create or import an existing workspace, which is kind of cool. And creating a workspace basically just runs ngnew. You just select where you want it to be, and you give it a name, and you say if you want it to just have the default schematic set or our sexy narwhal schematic set, which is just very, very cool. Cool people choose that option. But additionally, you can also just import, an old project that you have. And when you do, you get to see this page, which is kind of nice. And this page sort of gives you an overview of all of your Angular CLI projects, which is sort of a new concept that's part of CLI 6. But basically, what this means is like it shows you a list of your applications, and it shows you a list of your reusable parts of like reusable individual projects, which in NX, like we call those libs. Angular CLI calls them projects, but they're just like reusable entities. And
so this is the view of, we're looking at one of our workspaces right now, right? And we're seeing all the stuff within that workspace.
Yeah, we're actually looking at the Angular console itself. Like we can build itself, and I can open it in a browser, and we'd have a very similar view to what we're looking at now.
Yeah.
So we see some of our ng commands there, right? In the represented as buttons. So we got build, we got test, we got serve. That's cool.
Yeah, we sort of made a decision of what people are most likely to do. We think that people really like generating components and really like testing, or we hope they really like testing. That remains to be seen. But yeah, these are just quick actions that we think people are most likely to run on an individual project.
And so Victor, you mentioned about it being generic and just reading and doing everything that Angular CLI does. So I'm assuming that if we're looking at this and we see, the Angular console application has serve, test, and build. The E2E doesn't have anything. The libraries have this test. Is that because that's surfacing what the architect in Angular CLI, what commands are underneath there that could actually run for those individual projects?
Yeah, that is correct. Right. So then we'll show it in just a second. You can actually look at all of the tasks you can run, right? But we sort of know the 3 or 4 that you are likely to run very frequently, right? And we show those. What I think we might do in the future, which we don't do right now, is we can collect the data about what you're likely to run, and maybe the list of quick actions right now, which is fixed, right, can become a bit more variable. So we would know that you like to test a lot, but you also like to lint super hard, right? So we can add like test and lint, so you can lint from this page instead of going to the other page or the other screen that then is going to show in a second.
But this is really cool because what we can see right now is we've been presented with this metadata that typically we have to dig into the angular.json file to discover, right? We have to see all list of our projects in that configuration. We have to look at the architect node and see all the different commands that can be run. And right here in this UI, we've got all of that surfaced to us quickly, as well as the ability to just run those as well with a click. That's really cool.
It is really cool. I agree, Justin. Well said. What else is really cool is being able to open external applications, which you can do with these top buttons. You can open it in Visual Studio Code, one of the greatest text editors ever created by man, and also WebStorm and others that we'll add over time. Or the Finder, which is, you can look at files, so that's great. Anyway, moving on. Victor was alluding to basically this screen, which is a much more verbose version of these quick commands. This is like all the available commands that you have to run. Basically, they come from the different schematic sets that you have installed. This particular workspace has our narwhal schematics and the default set. So you can do the things you'd expect to do, like generate a class or a directive or a module. And when you do, you sort of are presented with a UI, which represents all the flags that command supports. And it tells you when the command's ready to be run, because this button won't be disabled. And it'll display the commands that you're building down here. So if I'm making a module and I give it a name called that module, it'll represent that name down here and show you the exact commands that we're building with this UI. But generally, we're just building a command that you could just as easily run in a terminal, and we'll have the same output.
To be clear, that terminal, or with air quotes, that terminal you're showing below is not an actual terminal, or is that just a display there to reflect what would be run?
It's not really a terminal. Like, I mean, it depends on your definition, but basically the one down here just shows like the literal dry run results. Like, we do ng generate module with dry run, and we display the exact result set in here. And so like we're sort of like, this isn't like the literal terminal app on Mac. Like, these buttons don't actually work, but you know,
it's just a visual representation of what would be executed.
Yes, that is correct. It's a read-only view of what would be executed.
Yeah,
although we do leverage the same tooling that they use inside of the Hyper terminal app, if you've ever seen that from Zeit. So that's an Electron terminal app, and we leverage the same fundamental library to represent that terminal output. So it's kind of a terminal, but yeah, it's running entirely within the Angular console app.
Okay,
And
I just want to make sure it wasn't an experience like VS Code provides, where you can actually type and execute other commands within there.
Not right now.
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to set expectations for people like myself who haven't seen or used the console yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so aside from being a read-only view, like when you choose to generate it, you know, it shows you the CLI output, so you get some useful things like what files are created and stuff like that. And that's pretty much it. Like the UI is kind of cool in that we like do auto completion for some things. Like I, for one, don't remember like what my projects are on a regular basis, and I don't really want to have to go parse a JSON with my eyes. So this is sort of a nicer flow. Mostly because like, oh yeah, go on.
So I was going to say, I think this is one of the single most important things that people might overlook if they just read, oh, there's a UI for the CLI, and they might dismiss it as something which is just a tool for beginners, because I'm a command line expert. I use the command line every day, and therefore I know what I'm doing. But it's not just about the capability, the ability to run commands in a terminal. It's about how much time do you spend looking up commands, how much time do you spend looking up the different flags for commands, how many times do you look up the names of your, as Dan said, the names of your own projects because you can't remember the casing or something like that. So it's about just improving productivity through these very small efficiency gains, which add up to an awful lot over the course of a day, over the course of a week, over the course of a year. And if you're doing that across multiple team members where everyone's using this tool, it can really, really add up to a lot of efficiency savings. So I think that's the thing. It's Angular console is not necessarily just allowing people a way to discover the CLI if they're not a developer or if they're not a command line user. I think it's really beneficial for all Angular users. That's how that's our aim, is to make it valuable for everybody.
Yeah, to that point, like even at the very early stages of like creating this thing, like when it was just Victor and I hacking on it and it didn't have much of a UI, I still used it to build Angular console because it's just nice. Like despite like having a very like depth of knowledge of how the CLI works, I still type the commands wrong because I'm bad at spelling. All programmers are bad at spelling. So like, I don't know. It's really nice to have this here so you can't screw up, because screwing up just makes you feel dumb. And this makes you feel really smart because it always works.
So what's under that optional field?
Oh, Justin, I'm glad you asked. So up here, we've sort of identified like required fields and fields that we think are like you're more likely to use than others. But down here are, you know, the others, the ones that you aren't going to use as much, like toggling on and off spec. Like, why would you ever not generate a spec with your module? That would be insane. But all these flags are here. They're the same flags that the commands in the CLI support. And, you know, they're here for you to use if you'd like to.
So I noticed there's different inputs, you know, like he's got the toggle switch, you got the drop down. Like, how are those controlled in terms of, you know, from the schematics?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. So the schematics support like a couple kinds of flags, one of which is obviously a Boolean. So we like identified the type and we're like, oh, this is a Boolean. Booleans map really well to sliders, so we're going to show people a slider. Other things like projects, we're just like, it's a general text field, but we just decided that we would apply our own secret sauce on top of like adding a generic string, so we offer an autocomplete menu. So that's sort of like we have a white list of terms that get the special treatment. And other things are just generic text fields. So you type a generic string, sort of like that. And we don't have one on this page, but if we go to the component one, there should be a regular dropdown. Like these aren't, we haven't done any secret sauce on top of here. These are just all the different types of change detection that the CLI supports. So we display them as an autocomplete menu, so you don't have to remember like that you have to capitalize the word native, because I never remember that ever.
And so is that something that's defined in the schematic JSON file right there, the options that are available for that particular field? Or is that some magic code inside of Angular console that's deciding that it's view encapsulation and finding those options?
Yeah, they're hard coded. Like the tool's meant to be generic. Like the schematic supports like these enum type flags, and you have to specify what valid enum values are. And so even the Angular component schematic does this, and it has like these 4 options inside of it.
Yeah.
Well, 3 options in unset. But
yep. So it is, like as Dan mentioned, just to make it very clear that the tool is generic in the sense that we just treat the same metadata that the CLI uses, to execute stuff. And this includes the types of fields. And for example, view encapsulation, those 3 values are in the metadata that the CLI or as the default schematics come with, right? So we don't have those anywhere, right? The magic sauce that we add a little bit, just a little bit, is in identifying things like what folks are likely to use, right? If you look at, for example, we have the important field and optional field. The CLI doesn't differentiate between them, right? All the fields to create equal in the CLI. There are no like 2 classes of fields, right? Because we know that you are looking at the component schematic, and we just we have a little bit of things there for folks who are, because we know how often you're going to use it. We want to help you just a little bit by seeing the stuff that you are likely to use, right? But if you open a schematic that is not part of the default set, let's say you have an organization, flamboyant narrow, and you build your own flamboyant narrow schematics, you open those and you will see those in a flat set, right? So you want, some of the secret sauce will go away, but most of it will work in exactly the same way. So just a few things will become slightly less smart, right? But it will still work. You can still, you still get the auto completion, the drop downs will work, the booleans will be displayed as toggles, and all those things will work in exactly the same way. Just a little bit smartness will be involved.
I think I may have found a possibility of offering an idea for a feature. If you go back to the component generate, one of the things within there is a style extension. Is it possible to read defaults that would be set in the global? So if I've configured my workspace for this to always generate lesser Sass files or stylus files by default, are you able to parse those defaults in to include within here before generating?
Yeah, we should be able to do that. Yeah, it's just an omission. It's a good idea, Mike. Send an issue. Or APR. APR isn't bad.
So the idea right now is that with the CLI, you can specify defaults within your Angular and to be able to parse those and predefine those within here.
Yep.
Yeah. In general, this field has made me very sad. I know it should, there is a concrete set of style extensions that are supported, and it's still a general text field. But, that will be fixed because it annoys me, and I contribute to the project. You could also fix things that annoy you and also contribute to the project.
So this is one of my favorite features, not only because of the fact that it surfaces all these options and things that we talk about in terms of you don't have to remember all these things. You can see the different fields, but I feel like the schematics gives everybody a lot of power to do their own custom schematics and everything like that, right? And the metadata file that you have there, you can define a lot of stuff and really scope that. But I think a lot of people end up rushing that out, right? And adding these schematics and don't really put the fine details into their metadata for their schematics. But if you do, then this Angular console is going to give you even a better experience with that, with the multi-select dropdown and things like that. So it really, hopefully, will guide people to really spend the time to dial in their schematics and that configuration of that metadata, because then it'll really be even more productive in this experience here. So
yeah, I agree, Justin. I think that's It's a very similar to how, if you look at, for example, type systems or type languages, right? If you use let's say a very, not down, but sort of, a very text-oriented way of dealing with program. Like say you open Vim, just hack and win, right? You're having like TypeScript support or like even, let's say, Haskell support, more sophisticated support, right? Won't add that much because your tooling doesn't benefit from having that information, from having the type information that you the language provides, right? But if you switch to VS Code or IntelliJ or anything like that, and the information is actually used, then you start valuing type languages quite a bit more, right? Because you have all these refactoring capabilities, lots of other things, right, that are just given to you, right? And you're like a lot more productive, right? Similarly, the Angular CLI 6 right, actually provides a lot of static information, right, that we, like the Angular console uses, but other tools can use as well, right? And if you're coming from a different background, from a different community, like from a different front-end community, you can say, oh, that's extra. That's not really needed, right? It seems unnecessary. It just complicates things. No, it doesn't just complicate things, right? Because you have that information, you can write generic tools like that, right? When nothing is hard-coded, there is no switch statement anywhere, right? And it will work properly because we can, like search for that information through the UI.
Cool.
I see that we can like put in different extensions and things like that here. Is there a way for it to like pick up the options that we already have like configured and things like that, so we don't have to like actually put these in or rely on the defaults of the UI here?
That's what I suggested. I'm actually typing an issue into the repo right now.
Yeah, it'll get added. It's a really good idea.
It just got +1 by the sound of it.
Sorry, Brock.
All right, Dan, what else?
Okay, so that was like generating, but you also do some other things some other time other than generating code. For example, you might have some NPM scripts that you make that you like to run. Like if you have a custom start script which does ng serve and also starts your API server at the same time, you might have created like an NPM script for it, and you can run one of those. You can give it some arguments. You can run it. And additionally, you can also do anything that the Angular CLI do out of the box, like do ng build, ng lint, ng serve, ng test. And you can also do these things specifically for an individual project. Like if you want to lint, if you don't want to lint the whole world and you just want to lint this one library that you've been working on, you can do that too. And you get all the little knobs that ng-lint gives you here, like the fix flag, which is the best of all the flags in my opinion. And then you can run it, and it runs, and theoretically fixes all of your lint issues for you.
Can you bring up the build one? Because that's something we're kind of probably familiar with, running ng build.
Yep. You got your AOT flag, your watch flag, some other things that people probably don't use. And you can run it. And it starts running, and it shows you Webpack churning. And eventually it'll stop churning, and you can launch your Angular app.
So this is what Victor was talking about, where we currently show you the exact output that you would get if you ran this manually in a terminal, obviously with all the benefits of the input being better, or more intuitive rather. And this is an area we can really start to explore in the future, where we take a different form of output, for example, like some JSON output from the Angular CLI itself, and we could visualize that for you. We could show how your builds have changed over time. We could show all kinds of interesting things. And there's interesting inspiration from other tools, from things like the Vue CLI UI that exists out there. So that's something we're keeping a close eye on, and we'll bring some really cool things to this.
I have a feature request to add emojis.
Just
like everywhere,
floating all over the app.
Yeah.
In the console. It makes me so happy when I yarn install and it's got all the fun emojis.
Yeah.
I think that's an Angular CLI request.
Yeah.
I logged an issue about it and they shut me down on it. So
Hey, so Dan, can you go back to that the run screen real quick, please?
Sure.
Yeah, clear. Okay, so it's actually surfacing these npm scripts in package.json, like you mentioned, right? Right up there at the top.
Yep. Yeah, just parses your package.json under the scripts field.
So KS Monster is in our chat question, and I think it's basically if I had a custom npm script to run build, right, with some flags, AOT or whatever, that would surface in here that I could run my custom build script right from a click here as well, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And currently, like you don't get much. Like you can add generic arguments, but theoretically in the future that might be a little bit better.
Yeah, one of our sort of main things to do, right, is to enable you to type your npm scripts in a similar way you do with CLI commands. So you can describe the shape of all the inputs, so we can generate the same form, right? Because a lot of companies have like a layer of npm scripts on top of default CLI commands, right? We want to make sure those work in the same, like in a very nice way. One thing I want to also ask you then to do, I'm not sure how visible it's going to be, but if you open VS Code right now, right, and you just add a new script, even if it's like a Cecilia script, like just echoing your name, you will see that script appearing in that list instantly, right?
That is true. Let me share my entire screen, and maybe we can see
hide everything that is not to, you know, that you don't want everyone to see. Thousands of people will see a whole screen, so be aware.
Sure. Yep. All of those. Yep. I'm not going to make any jokes. That's fine.
As you're doing that and sharing that up, I have a question. So I see the vision with what you're going here to make everybody more performant and more to make everything discoverable. Can you talk a little bit about what your thoughts are regarding UX for performance, like user performance, to be able to perform actions as quickly as possible? If you've thought about potentially adding keyboard shortcuts or navigation shortcuts or anything like that to be able to improve developer productivity.
That's a great question. Yeah, I think that everything you should be able to do absolutely everything without ever touching the mouse. This is my goal, right? So all the tools I use professionally can be used without touching the mouse, right? This includes email, my to-do list, and in the editor, right? I can do, including the side and the windows and stuff, right? Has to happen through the keyboard, right? So currently we don't do any of that, apart from the default stuff that might just happen to work, right? But you know, it's coming soon. Before the final is out, we want to add some basic navigation shortcuts, so you can start typing command, and it will just, you know, show you options, you know, that you are likely to go to, or screens you're likely to go to. Right? Similar to if you're familiar with like Things 3 on Mac, right? That's the app where you can start typing anywhere, just random stuff, and it will figure out anything that's remotely related to what you're typing, and would allow you to navigate, and it works really well, right? You don't want to have any special shortcut go to a project. No, I just want to blindly type feature blah, right? And being redirected there, right? So
way to set expectations, Victor.
No, that it has to be either this or nothing at all. There is
Yeah, I wasn't expecting anything to be there out of the box. I mean, you just have one beta release at this point, so I wasn't expecting anything to be there. I just was curious what future plans would be, because I know conceptually a lot of websites have moved to the idea of, all right, you hit slash, it brings you up to a search, and that might be a concept that you could be able to start to say, all right, I want to generate, and what you want to generate to be able to get there.
No, I believe me, on the same page. You know why? Because this hand is tired, right? The hand that I used to move my mouse actually hurts a lot. I have serious wrist pain, right? Which means that it's easier for me to keep my hands on the keyboard, right? And because I use the tools, it will have to work very soon. Otherwise, I'll have to cut off my hand.
Yeah, in general, I've noticed that like the majority of web apps that are like really big, like Google Inbox, use Vim key bindings. Like you can actually just navigate them the same way that you would navigate code in Vim. So that's probably going to get added at some points.
Konami code will have to do something as well at some point.
Probably. I'll make a giant narwhal appear or something.
Yeah.
Okay, are you guys ready to see some live updating in real time?
Yeah. We're ready.
The answer is yes.
Okay, we're gonna do it. It's great. I tested it while everybody was talking, so I know it works. I was really scared about that. Anyway, okay, so we have this new script that I haven't saved. I'm about to save it. Okay, get ready. Okay, I saved it. Oh, there it is. There's the new script. Okay, it works. It's a great product.
Oh my gosh, it even animated in.
I know, right? Didn't it? Oh, fuck.
Very fancy. Very fancy.
Yeah.
So good. Okay. Yep. With proof of concepts, it all works.
And just to make it super clear, right? We don't have any specific logic for updating your scripts. The UI doesn't have any state. Anytime you touch the file system in any way you want, right? The UI is going to pick it up and reflect it, I think, in like 2 seconds or whatever the timeout is, right? So that's a very important property, right? So there is nothing there hardcoded when it comes to reflecting changes in the UI, right? No matter what you do, you can screw it up in any you want, it will reflect in 2 seconds.
Yep. Very true. Okay.
So
I'll stop sharing again.
what's that puzzle piece over there?
The puzzle piece is very interesting.
All right.
Okay. So the puzzle piece is what we were talking about at the very beginning of the podcast, where we have basically all the extensions to the CLI that we know of currently. And so we have them as a list here. We obviously have our narwhal extensions or schematics, which are super, super cool. We have the material ones, which are also super cool. And a lot of other ones that you might have not known about. But we have a relatively good list of them. And as more come out, we'll try to add them. If you have a set that you really like, you can ping us and we'll add it. But basically, it's just a way to discover what's available for you to use with the CLI.
To add to this, we're talking with the Angular team to have like a list of the sort of preferred extensions. Like if you go to, let's say, the VS Code marketplace, and you will see all the extensions that the VS Code has, right? As a bunch, right? So you might be confused by it, intimidated, and scared, right? Don't be scared, because we have a list of things that you're likely to use, something that they recommend, right? Having something like this here, right now the list is not ginormous, so it doesn't really make sense. But soon, right, having a sort of preferred list would appear, right? Like where you would see things like material, ngRx, NX, and other things like that.
So do we know, does Angular Material have schematics for it?
They do, in fact, and we're using them. They're already installed here. This whole thing was built using Angular Material, and they don't really use many generate commands, but they use schematics sort of so that when you update from one version to another, they can do auto fixes for you or auto migrations from one version to the next.
So the reason I ask is I see that that's installed in this workspace, right? So if I went to the code commands in there in the Angular console, would those surface if there was any?
If there was any, they would. Basically, with our narwhal schematics, if they weren't already installed and I hit install, that's basically the mechanism by which they would be added here. They're already installed, so they're already here. But if they weren't, this list would not exist.
So then as soon as I go in and say ngRx schematics and I install that package in my workspace, boom, Angular console's got the ngRx schematics available to me to run within the console, right?
Very sure.
That is, but we right before the release we broke it. I'm on it for the next release. It will be definitely working, and it's weak fault for breaking it. So
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's a good answer. So it's in principle it works, but in practice it doesn't. But it will next week. Okay, our new release will come out that will fix it. So
is it just the live update that's not working? I mean, if I shut down Angular, if I installed it, shut down Angular console, opened up Angular console again, those schematics would be there. Is that correct?
Well, we know that you installed it, so it's in the installed extension list, but we made a mistake with the, saving it in the GraphQL, so it will be fixed next week, but it's not a problem with live update. Live update works in every case, right?
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, that's basically all the features we have. And that's Angular console.
Okay, so then this screen right here, it starts off not showing any workspaces, and then you basically either open ones or create ones, and then Angular console, the instance of the application, keeps track of which ones you've opened, and then you can manage them going forward, correct?
Yep, that's correct. We want to make sure that, I don't know, you might open a bunch of projects, but not all of them are going to be super special to you. You might just be checking one out on GitHub. So that's why we have a list of your favorites. And if you're a brand new user and you're just getting like started with Angular, we wanted to like make it not so scary to get started, because I don't know, having to get started with the CLI when you've never coded is like phenomenally scary. But this button, it flashes and it has a ripple effect, and I don't know, it gives you a nice dopamine rush when you click it. And this looks like a file tree that you've seen before. So the goal is like, when you're just getting started, you're a brand new user, it's just not so scary.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. So what does the immediate future hold for the console, and what does the long-term future hold for it?
I can talk about it a little bit. The most immediate future is fixing bugs, making sure it's it's more robust, it doesn't break. Fixing some UX things that we need to address based on the feedback we receive. Right, so we're going to do it for the next couple of weeks. Then the next step, right, is what I talked about before, is showing you a different view of the output of commands. Right now we show you essentially what the terminal shows you. I want to give you a graphical view, of what build does, or server, or test, and stuff like that, right? After which we'll probably call it final, right? We want to do it relatively soon because I think the product is already quite robust, right? We spent a lot of time testing before, releasing public. We, showed it to a lot of people, got the feedback. So it's not the beta you usually see. If you go to like open source world, the beta usually means that at best, it won't, steal your money or whatever. So it's like, it's really bad. Right? Here, it's actually quite robust. The only reason why we call it beta and not something, more grandiose is that we actually want to be transparent, that we don't think it's fully ready, right? Not everything is in there, but in a few months it will be. So that's sort of the plan in terms of releasing and going to final, right? We're also talking to the Angular folks, to Steven in particular, right? To make it more of like an official thing, right? For example, right now we control the distribution. We are the ones who build the binaries, right? So we have the power, a lot of power, which feels good, but we don't want to have it, right? We want to give the power to Steven, right, from the Angular team, so he can build the distribution, right? That's essentially what the future is, right? We want to make it a tool that absolutely everyone who starts with Angular will feel comfortable with, and will know that it's supported. The Angular team supports it. It's if you go to AngularAir, I would like to see a link there that would lead you to the download page.
Very nice. Exciting stuff. Future looks bright. Anybody else have any last questions or comments about it that we want to get in here before we wrap up? Just shout it out if you do. All right, I'll take that as we've got it all covered. All right, well, thank you to all of the Narwhal team that came and talked about this. Ayşegül, Dan, James, and Victor, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Check it out. Try it. AngularConsole.com. Right? Windows, Mac, coming soon to Linux. Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Thanks.